Come to reenactment. It's rugby scrums, but with weapons.
Rugby scrums on steroids. I believe the cavalry have real swords.
I'm sorry, the cavalry? Hi guys, welcome back to another video. Today we are going to be talking once again about LARP, moving back from writing, back to a different hobby, since I cannot pick one to save my life. Today I wanted to talk specifically, as you can probably guess from the title, about the differences between my favourite hobby, LARP, and a friend of mine's favourite hobby, reenactment. So I've got my housemate and dear friend Luciana here. She is a reenactor, and she's here today to talk with me about the differences between these two often conflated hobbies. So the first thing I think we should do is tell you what is LARP and reenactment. For those of you who don't know, LARP stands for live action roleplay and is essentially an adult game of make-believe or Dungeons and Dragons in real life. You play a character and you go to an event and play that character for a series of days. There is combat, there's role-playing, there's magic. I'll link some really great videos about it in the description below if you don't know what it is.
Whereas reenactment is a historical hobby about recreating the past, history.
It's, from what my understanding of reenacting, it's you reenact battles from a certain period.
Yes. I mean, it does tend to change a lot. It's very different. The
general idea is you reenact a certain period of history for generally an audience of the public. Basically what we wanted to do this video for is these hobbies tend to get conflated a lot. They often get compared. I know I've compared LARP and reenactment before I knew anyone who did reenactment or knew anything about the hobby, because it's an easy way to explain it to people who don't understand either of them. But overall, they're not particularly similar, actually. They have quite a few really, really huge differences, which we've figured out over our course of being friends.
There is crossover. A lot of LARPers also do reenactment, and reenactors do LARP. But they are different hobbies.
So we've come up with a few points of what to talk about to explain the differences between these two really awesome hobbies that we both love. And we're going to go over them with you guys, and then we also have some questions which are commonly asked to both of us. Alright, so number one, history versus fantasy. I think this is the main difference between reenactment and LARP. For me, LARP is fantasy. Even historical LARPs. I do a Wild West LARP. It's a fantasy. It's fantastical. It's history, but it's history adapted to make it available for everyone. You don't have to be super historically accurate. I am, because I'm that person. But it's not necessary. As long as you get the general Wild West vibe, you don't have to look exactly like you're out of 1882, you know?
Whereas with reenactment, it is genuinely historical. The kit that you wear is historical, and there's a big focus on education of the public, because a lot of the shows tend to be for the public to show how people acted and dressed, and a lot of reenactors do a lot of research and do a lot of work to make sure that it is as historically accurate as possible.
I mean, you've told me you've made kit in a historically accurate way before.
Yeah.
Whereas I just slap mine under a sewing machine, cross my fingers and hope for the best.
Yeah. Battle reenactment and historical reenactment is about the history.
Yeah. It's entirely historical based, whereas LARP, even historically based ones, tend to have either fantastical elements or not as much of a focus on history. And, of course, LARP evolves from fantasy. So I feel like that's kind of the main difference between the two, and that's where you might say, oh, is that like reenactment to a LARPer? And they'll be like, nope, we don't care about history here. Or you'll say, oh, is that like LARP to a reenactor? And they'll be like, no, we actually care about history.
Yeah, yeah.
So you mentioned fighting,
yes,
which brings us very much into the second point we have, combat versus roleplay. For me, at least, the idea I've gotten from reenactment is that it tends to be more combat-based, whereas LARP tends to be more roleplay-based.
Again, it really depends on the society you're in and the period that you're reenacting. For instance, with Sealed Knot doing Civil War battles, you're reenacting actual battles that happened. We have a historical record of them. We know what happened and who won. Whereas with Viking reenactment, you don't really know much about, actual battles, but with all of my groups, the combat is actually competitive. Although
really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. That's so cool. They're like wrong. They're wrong but romantic, right but revolting.
That is.
Hi, I know nothing about the English Civil War.
That's the horrible histories way. They actually
don't expose me.
They looked pretty much exactly the same.
Damn it! You mean the Cavaliers didn't wear giant hats into battle? How could you disappoint me?
That's why I joined the Cavalier side.
No, I'm not. I will not accept this. Historical accuracy has nothing to do with this. I'm no longer part of this video.
Okay. So, no.
Scooch.
So does that mean reenactment wins?
0 out of 10. I can't approve of this.
Okay.
For LARP, the systems I play, and I feel like the vast majority of LARP, it's very much roleplay based. Even the combat has roleplay in it, because you're not just playing a general person who lived in history, you're playing a specific character that you have either made or helped to create. It definitely changes it, so there's a lot of interaction with other people and their characters, and a huge chunk of the day when you're not battling is taken up by role-playing with other people, whether that be light role-playing, heavy role-playing, emotional role-playing, ball gowning, whatever, political role-playing, military role-playing, whatever kind of role-playing you do. The fact that there are so many to begin with goes to show just how much LARP is more based in role-playing, whereas reenactment seems to be largely based around reenacting battles.
There is a certain air of audience immersion, and in Normanus we do a lot of big shows showing how courts worked, and we try to keep up that sort of medieval village vibe throughout. But you do talk to the public as a person reenacting, rather than...
It's very much reenactment versus roleplay. You're not pretending to be a character that didn't exist.
Between yourselves, you're just talking as friends who are reenacting. And a lot of people are specifically there for the fighting.
I think let's talk about weapons first, because that is, again, a huge difference.
The most fun part.
I'll mention, we do big battles at LARP, and people will be like, do you use real weapons? And it's like, hell no. And Luciana's like, yes, I have an actual sword. As much as I'm sure reenactors are nerds, LARPers are weak nerds, and we do not like getting actually painfully hurt. Whereas this absolute masochist over here likes it and does it frequently. Please tell us.
I don't have my sword here with me to show you, but it is actual steel.
We'll insert photo here.
Yes, I had it made by a blacksmith, a friend of mine. So they're blunted weapons.
Yeah, you fight with actual steel and iron. Alright, well, after that segue, I think the third, proper point we have to talk about before we just go into general questions and other little tidbits that are both different and similar is the concept of performance versus personal. As a LARPer, I hate seeing LARP documentaries, because LARP is not designed to be filmed or watched. It is not a performative thing. It is a personal thing where you and the people around you are each experiencing it. And honestly, watching it a lot of the time, it looks kind of stupid. That doesn't take away from the fact that it feels so awesome in person, but it's not a performative art, it's a personal thing. Whereas reenactment, as we've heard, is designed largely for the public eye, by the sounds of it.
It's we do lots of shows throughout the summer that are often at castles or historical battle sites that are designed to entertain the public and to educate the public about this certain thing. You know, you do create these things, and most of the public don't tend to care that much exactly what weave your woolen kirtle has and exactly why you have this, but you still know it. You do all the research and
well, it's one of those things where it's like, if it's not that, you'll notice it, but when it is, you don't.
Yeah. So yeah, it is a performative thing. It is entertaining the public, and it's, rather than LARP's very, very much personal role-playing thing. With LARP, you'll buy tickets for events.
The vast majority of people, buy tickets unless they crew, and then they're part of, that's, admin and
Whereas
stuff.
with reenactment, you are the crew. You are the performer, and you set things up, and you act, and you do all of this, because that is...
Yeah, it's the difference between, for the LARPs out there, you'll know, between crewing and playing, or between being essentially the non-player characters and the player characters.
So with reenactment, you're both the player and the crew at the same time, whereas LARP there's more of a distinction.
Which is generally decided by about 50 or more pounds.
With reenactments, you do it... So in most of the societies, you do have, like, a show every weekend throughout the summer from about... the show season is, like, April to September. And, yeah, depending on what society you're in, it is essentially every weekend at a castle or a battleground.
That's impressive.
And when you're, like me, overcommitted and in way too many societies, that's a lot of choice between how much you can get to.
So I think for LARPers, you can go as often or as little as you like, and it depends on where you live, the kind of LARPs you're into, and how much money you have to burn. So for me, if just talking about the main system that I play, which is Empire LARP, then it's 4 times a year. I can go less, I can go more. I don't think I've actually ever yet been to one all 4 times a year. That was meant to be this year.
You don't have to pay to go to these things, but you're also not paid to go to them, and there's a lot of money and effort that you usually have to put in with kit.
So reenactment, you don't pay to go, but you're not paid to go either. LARP, it swings one of 2 ways. You can either get a free ticket to a place. This is, of course, in my experience, I have not played every LARP system in the world, but in my experience, unless it's like a university society, you generally pay to go for a ticket, and again, that can range from £50 to £300. And I would say it's always worth the money. The more expensive a LARP is, tends to be the higher production value, but that's also not always true. And then certain places will offer you a free ticket if you play a crew or NPC member. So LARP it's a pay-to-go thing, and then, you might have to pay for travel, and so on and so forth. However, I think the place where you can get away with saving a bit of money in LARP is things like kit. Because my kit, for example, my Wild West character, Kitty, who I'll put a photo on the screen now, who wears an 1860s style ball gown, I made that ball gown for £10. I bought a pattern for £5 and a pair of curtains for another £5 and made it myself with my sewing machine. I guess it depends on the kind of effort you're talking about.
Yeah.
Personally, for me, LARP, if you buy some decently priced kit and you're not travelling too far, the actual physical effort, and if you don't like combat, the actual physical effort is minimal. Emotional effort from role-playing can be huge, because I'm a big role player, and as you guys know, because of my ball gowning video, link there, I'm huge into big emotional role-playing, and that takes a huge amount of emotional effort.
Actual physical effort, I know a lot of people who actually learn historical crafts. Like, I've tried my hand at a lot of different things. Embroidery, cooking, blacksmithing, weaving, spinning, all of these. And you can choose from so many different crafts that you want to learn.
I think it depends on the kind of effort you're talking about and the kind of person you are in either of the hobbies. I think we got this question because I talk a lot about how role-playing is, and LARP in particular, is I want to say out-of-body experience, that's not the word I'm looking for, it's escapist. So I think that's the idea, which really feels less like you, and, which is more escapist. I would argue probably LARP, because it's fantasy.
As far as escapism goes, I find reenactment to be very much escapist, because when you're there within these kind of historically accurate tents and fires with bubbling, and you're eating all this food that they would have eaten at the time, and all of this, these crafts going around, you feel like you've been transported back in time. However, you are also sitting and hanging out with your mates in a field, and you know each other really well from training, probably, and you are able to just go up and strike up a conversation about whatever your social media...
Yeah, the meme of the week.
Yeah, the meme of the week.
Yeah, without getting yelled at by old people.
Yeah, you are.
That's never happened to me.
The number of times people come up to you and say, "Is that a real fire?" Or you know, some people...
No, ma'am, that's my friend Gavin. He just thought he'd have a little transformation.
Some people bring their children. Is that a real baby?
No, that's just my friend Gavin dressed up in a baby costume.
Also, oh, you must be hot in that. Yes, ma'am.
No, actually...
I'm wearing 4 layers of wool and a gambesson and chainmail.
I
am.
don't know what you're talking about, sir. I've hidden an entire air conditioning unit up here.
Oh god, there was one that once approached my friend and started telling him about how she was a warrior princess in her past life.
Ah, I love the public. I feel like there are tons of similarities though, because we've been chatting about this. You know, there's the idea of it being super personal, and like it's a thing that like people put time and effort and they love so dearly. And the concept of like dressing up a certain way and spending a weekend hanging out with your friends in a field in a certain setting and doing combat and doing certain activities, cooking. It's very similar in that way.
And it's a good time. It is fun. Bonding with your friends around a fire, drinking mead in the middle of the middle of a 12th century castle.
Even better, singing shanties around that fire.
Singing shanties, that's something it has in common.
LARP and reenactment, they're really different hobbies. They are historical and fantastical, they're personal, they're performative, but overall, they're full of people who love and dedicate huge chunks of their lives to the things that they enjoy doing. Us included.
Do you know what? At the end of the day, it's just a big bunch of nerds in a field.
And they're both hobbies that we love.
Yeah.
Alright. Well, thank you guys so much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please feel free to subscribe to my channel. I make videos about LARP, writing, and fashion because I can't pick a hobby. This has been my housemate Luciana. Feel free to like the video if you would like to see more videos with her in it. I would love to make more. I will link her socials below, and have a fantastic day.